Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Dental Decoders. We've got myself, Rebecca Herring, and Brittany Rogars with us. And today we have an incredible guest. I'm so excited to have Kim McCleskey with us. And thank you for joining us. We're so excited to have you here with us.
Thank you. I am happy to be here.
Kim, you and I have known each other for several years. But I would love for you to share with our listeners who may not know your background or experience in the dental industry. What have you been up to, and what do you do to help support our dentists in the field?
That's a really big question. I am with Professional Transition Strategies currently. This will be my last position in dentistry. I am sure of that. So I've been in dentistry for over 35 years. I started, I'll try not to make it too long of an intro, but 35 years is hard to just succinctly deliver the message. But 35 years, a great deal of that time was spent working in practices. And at about year 12, 13, something like that, my doctor decided that he was going to sell his practice. And I was like, oh, all right. I think maybe when you sell, I'm going to find something else to do. I think I'm going to leave dentistry. I've been managing a lot of revenue and a lot of people, and I just wasn't sure I wanted to continue on. And he said, oh, no, Kim, I need you to stay. Just stay and help them transition. Will you do that? I was like, all right. Turned out I really liked these guys, and they liked me too. We moved on to acquire, there ended up being 4 dentists. And over the course of time, we grew through DeNovos and acquisitions. And I loved that process. I loved it a lot. And what ended up happening over the course of the next 3-4 years was they just decided to kind of part ways. But I learned a lot in that time frame. And so I started a company called True North. And at True North, I was doing startups and pre and post acquisition consulting because I had a lot of experience in that area and I loved it. And fast forward a couple of years, I was trying to find a partner who could help my company grow. And that proved to be really challenging. I knew a lot of people who could be really great at this, but they ended up just wanting a W-2. And I needed somebody who had an entrepreneurial spirit because I did. I ended up merging my company with the Avidas group, which was a PEO. So they do payroll. They had all the back office services like accounting and marketing and just you name it. They're just a full business platform behind this PEO. And they have a lot of dentists. And so they decided they wanted to start a dental consulting firm. And they hired a dentist, and sweet guy, but that wasn't his specialty. He was a dentist and he didn't know how to build out a consulting firm. I did know what to do. I did know how to build things. And because they were in 16 markets, they had the infrastructure for, of course, with payroll that they were doing. They wanted to create a virtual billing insurance company. And so I built that out for them. And then they had me speaking the country on embezzlement because I learned a whole heck of a lot about embezzlement and had created some processes and systems that were really helpful to business owners. And so I took that show on the road with their help and grew my network that way, working with a lot of fantastic dental insurance experts in our industry. And Rebecca, I know most of them, all of them actually, but they were all really helpful to me. I obviously had submitted insurance and I knew a lot about it, but my role was more to hire the right people to implement and to have the best advice and training that they could. And at any rate, that company was acquired 2 years after I started that. And I just decided it wasn't for me, managing more money and more revenue than I'd ever managed in my life. And I was just like, okay, I don't want to do this. And so I stepped away. It's still going on to this day, that company that was acquired. They're doing dental and medical billing. But Kyle Francis knew me well, knew where I was in my career and at that time. And so he invited me to come sell dental practices, PTS. And that was coming up on, it'll be 5 years. 5 years in December. Yeah. And this is really the place that I always wanted to be. I'd worked with a lot of brokers for probably 15 years. I worked with different brokers because we were always bringing on partners or something. And so I had a pretty good understanding of a process and the way that things could go bad and the way that things could go good. And I thought in 2010, I want to do that. But that sounded like really crazy. Could I really do that? Yeah, it turns out that I really can do it and I'm loving it. And that's when I started with this will be my last job in dentistry. It will be my last job in dentistry.
I love that you were guided in like you knew where you wanted to be all along and then you were just thrust that way anyways. So the path was maybe a little bit less direct than we had hoped for, but that you wound up exactly where you were supposed to be. Yeah, I love
they
stories
always are.
Like
I was just I feel like so many things is that way for all of us. So
yeah. Yeah, no, that's the way it is. And you can't, like when I started out, it's 35 years, you guys, I can't make it short. I don't know. It all ties together though. And I think that's the beauty of just our industry. There's so many different directions that you can go, but you got to put one foot in front of the other, right? To get there.
So when I was previously in a practice, one of the roles that I had was we were growing through acquisitions exclusively. Then I worked with another practice that grew through DeNovos exclusively. And so I have a question for you that I would just like your opinion on. Do you have a preference? If you were to expand a practice, do you have a preference on acquisition versus DeNovo? And if so, why?
Oh, that's a great question. So I love DeNovos. I loved it from the very beginning, the process of really planning and then executing and dialing down so many pieces of that. I really love that. And I think if I were a young dentist, that's the route I would likely go, quite honestly, because it's all yours. And now, so fast forward from 2014 when I started doing DeNovos. So I wasn't involved in acquisition. I was involved in consulting on those acquisitions, but I wasn't actually involved in them. To date, I've sold 8 of those practices that I started back then. And so I've been able to see, where they came over the course of time and the value and the culture, the business acumen of those dentists far exceeds because I required them to learn QuickBooks, learn how to look at a P&L, learn how to all the things and culture and vision and all of that. So I really dug that. I love that. But on the other hand, I can see the benefit of having something that's already established because those docs who are doing DeNovos, they have a second job. They don't just open the door and don't go to a second job, because you don't have a full schedule, right? You need to plan for a full schedule. You need to plan to add hygiene. So you're going to be doing hygiene in the beginning, it's all the things. But I don't know. I guess it just probably depends on the person. But I loved it, DeNovo.
That was a selfish question. I just like to hear everybody's perspective on that. I personally am an acquisitions girly, but I really like the challenge of seeing something that's kind of usually chaotic when you come into it and then watching it completely transform. Yeah. I really love that. And I haven't had my hands in as many DeNovos as I have acquisitions, do what you know. But so that was my selfish question that I wanted to just get out of the way.
I'm good. I'm good with selfish questions.
For, let's just say, dentists or office managers, that type of thing, listening, coming out of dental school, right? You have that option of starting your own practice and doing your own thing, just yourself. I think that for a lot of dentists is very appealing to just do my own thing. I want it to be my practice, my things. But then on the flip side of that, you have the DSOs that are small, large, they're growing as well for a lot of different reasons. There's positives and negatives to that aspect as well. As you've been working with the selling side of practices, what are some of the myths I think that people maybe misunderstand about the DSO world and coming into ownership with a DSO?
It's different for the younger folks looking at a DSO than it is for folks that are of my generation and say in the last 15 years. How DSOs are viewed by that segment is very different than how the younger docs are viewing them, because DSOs are getting to them while they're still in dental school. And it's a completely different framework of how they're viewing them. And so in some ways, we have the perfect storm happening. And I hope I'm answering your question. But with debt, school debt, what it is, with interest rates, what they are, with inflation, what it is. And quite honestly, like personal debt, school debt, it's all just really heavy for these younger dogs. And so, in a way, the DSO path is the path of least resistance that's going to give them some security, right? Versus taking all of that and then trying to do a DeNovo or even an acquisition, like right out of school. It's just very different depending on where you are. Like I have a deal right now that's going, this guy he is in the military, practiced as a dentist in the military, but he's been practicing for 18 years. So his view is very different than somebody, right? And he doesn't have any debt. Like it's just very different.
It was actually a really great answer, right? Is trying to understand the difference, I think, between, like you said, a DeNovo and acquisition to a DSO. And I think just trying to understand the different models and trying to understand what some of the pros and cons are for the dentist today.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. 10, 15 years ago, like it wasn't hard for a dentist to come out of school, work as an associate maybe for a couple of years and be mentored and get an idea of what they like, what they don't like, and then to make a decision. Do I want to do a startup or do I want to do an acquisition? That wasn't a hard choice back then. It was like their school loans weren't outrageous. The debt situation wasn't what it was. The economy wasn't what it is and all those things. But now it's such a different animal. And I think one of the things that I enjoy about what I'm doing is helping a buyer really identify what's going to be the best route. Because we have a lot of them, they come to me because they think they want to buy a practice. And I can count on one hand, probably in the last 5 years, that I've talked them out of it and talked them into a DeNovo for reasons based around their current situation, what they've had, previous experience, all that kind of stuff. So I just think it's helpful to seek out advisors. Don't just assume what you need to do, because there are options around every single component of that I think once you have an advisor, whether that be a consultant or a business coach, somebody who has a high acumen of dentistry and skill set and can really assess a situation, can really speak into that with some wisdom. So advisors, I think, would be really helpful for folks.
That's some great advice. Thank you.
Yeah. So if someone is looking for someone to help them through that process, what are things that they should be looking for in terms of an expert? In the time of social media, everybody is an expert right now. So what are some things that people should be looking for when it comes to getting support through that process?
That's a complex question, mainly because the way that consulting has been set up, everybody has a lane. Everybody has a lane. Maybe their lane is operations. Maybe their lane is hygiene. Maybe their lane is receivables. It's complex, I think. And there aren't a lot of people who have a 30,000 foot view of all the processes, all the pieces. And I think that's what's unique to me, is that I've been here so long and I've done so many different things that I really can speak into that. Now, everybody needs a good attorney, because I'm not an attorney. Everybody needs a good accountant, because I'm not a CPA, right? Don't talk to me about your taxes. But I can look at financials. You need to have somebody who knows how to look at financials, somebody that understands operations, somebody that understands a business plan, somebody that can give you some recommendations for a banking relationship. Like, what are going to be the best terms, the best rates? All of these things are what a buyer or a young dentist would need. They need an advisor like that. And I think I have recommendations I probably know a handful of folks, myself included, that can really give some solid advice and direction about the approach and how to just really take a deep look into every area to be able to advise with some confidence, I think. But there's not a lot of people. So you just have to surround yourself with really good people, though. I think that's the key. Like, investing in yourself by finding the right people, be in the right room, right? Find the right groups, connect yourself with the right consulting group. There are several good consulting groups out there that really have a high acumen. collectively, there's a lot of power and knowledge to be found in these groups. So yeah, I'm a firm believer of that. First of all, I never want to be the smartest person in the room, and neither should you or anybody else. If you are, you should find another room. You should find another room. I've lived by that. And I feel like in every room I'm in, like I just want to learn. And that really is what it takes to be able to fast track, if you will, finding out what it is that you personally want, and then using the wisdom and the experience of all others to really help guide.
I definitely never want to be the smartest person in the room. That's why I always invite Brittany to come with me. So that
Rebecca, you're going to make my head not fit into these headphones anymore. You're always talking too much about how great I am, and it's uncomfortable.
That's awesome.
I have a curious question as well. When the dentists are going to go and like they sell their practice, right? How many of them actually try to do it by themselves? Like they just put it out there, say, hey, I'm just going to sell my practice, and let's just kind of throw it out there on these platforms and social media and see what happens. Maybe someone just wants to come in and buy it. Yeah. What are the advantages, disadvantages, right, to that approach? But really, what are the advantages of working with someone like yourself, Kim, a broker who can help them sell? I guess you don't do the selling side, you help them buy. But
no, I'm sell side only. I'm sell side only.
Sell side only.
Yeah. But I have to work with buyers because they need help and I need them to buy. So yeah.
So what are some of those advantages to working with someone like yourself versus just trying to do it all by yourself?
Yeah. Great question. I think this is so funny to me because I can't tell you how many sellers I have now, because like a lot of them they're ready to retire, right? They're looking for their exit strategy. So they've been around a while. And so many of them tell me, I just don't know the process now, because when I bought this practice, it was basically a handshake deal. And we went and we found an attorney and they drew up the contract for us. And it was like, we're done. Good luck. And that's really what it was, right? In the day. And I was like, I just love that. The simplicity of it just warms my heart in so many ways. But then, we fast forward to where we are now and all the legal stuff. Everybody has to have separate attorneys and you have to be guarded against so many things. And so many practices are, you need somebody who can really dive deep into financials and to practice management reports. And there's a lot at stake here, right? We're not talking about buying a practice for $60,000 like they did back in the day. This is the biggest investment a lot of these doctors will have made. And so there's so much at stake. And so if you buy something that isn't what it looks like on paper, you could be in really big trouble. To dig out of that could be really serious. And so for us, I always recommend, and the landscape has changed, right? Everybody knows that. With private equity and DSOs, everything has changed and acquisitions have changed. It's such a competitive environment now that it really makes the most sense to hire a broker that really does what they say that they're going to do. And I'm really confident in the way that we run a process, but a buyer really needs to know and trust that the prospectus that has been created for the seller is accurate. How are they going to know? Because most of them don't have buy side representation. There are folks out there that consult on the buy side, but that's a huge expense for a buyer who's about to incur a lot more expenses, right? So really finding the right broker, the right brokerage that is able to provide all the documentation that they use to create the prospectus, right? So for us, when a seller comes to us, we gather all the materials to create the prospectus and we put all of that in a data room, right? And a buyer and a bank, they have access to that to see how we created the prospectus. And so a banking relationship is going to be key for a buyer to really help advise on a lot of things that regarding the financials of the business. But at PTS, we do a free practice valuation. It's an unbiased third-party valuation of your business. Now, if we take you to market and we sell your practice, that's when we get paid when they get paid. We do not have a long-term listing agreement. We're highly motivated to get their practice sold, but we're not. And because we're paid off a commission, one would think, obviously, they want to get the most that they can, right? Because we're paid off a commission, which is all true. But if our valuation team overinflates the valuation, we can't get a buyer financed, right? No bank is going to finance something that doesn't make sense. So we just operate very ethically. And so we hold fiduciary only with our sellers, but our buyers, like I said, if we don't have a buyer, we don't have a deal. We need buyers, and we need to take care of the buyers because they don't know what the process is. They don't know what the next step is. We want it to be a win for a buyer and a seller. If that seller is happy, fantastic. If the buyer is unhappy, that's all bad because, their network is a bunch of buyers. And if they bought something, if they were sold a bill of goods that they're now struggling with, they're going to go tell everyone they know that they don't use that broker. Anyway, I just feel like there are other brokers out there that do a good job, but I think we do the best.
I love that. So if people are listening to the episode and they want to learn more about you and about what you can do to help them through their transition, or they just want to, maybe they're just starting to test the waters about selling their practice or purchasing a practice, where can they find you to learn more about you?
Great. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kim McCleskey on LinkedIn. You can find all of my contact information is there, but it's kim@professionaltransition.com. If you want to email me, but my phone number is also on LinkedIn. If you're a buyer and you're interested in looking for practices, we are a national company. And so we sell practices all over the country. You simply go to our website, professionaltransition.com. There's a section to buy a practice, and then you click on that, and then it's create a profile. As soon as you create a buyer profile, it triggers our team to send you an NDA, and then they send you all the practices. But all the brokers here, there's a whole bunch of us now, and we all work all across the country. So we're here to help buyers through the process. Please reach out.
That's awesome. As we wrap today's episode, we always end our interviews with a signature question, which is, in your life or career, what has been your decoding moment or your secret code that's allowed you to be successful?
That's easy. That's an easy one. Be of service. Just be of service. I'm not looking to transact. I'm looking for a successful transition. If you're just serving folks in our industry, everything good comes back to you. I promise. Yeah. That's my secret sauce. Serve.
That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. And I'm so grateful that you took some time to hang out with us today and blow my mind on all of these topics. I'm sure I speak for Bex too. I'd love to have you back for round 2 at some point, because we just scratched the surface and talked about some, like we mentioned, private equity. We talked a little about DSOs, but I'd love to dig into some of those topics more with you. And I'm sure it would bring a huge value to our listeners.
Yeah, I would love that. I really geek out on it. So yeah.
Awesome. Me too. So stay tuned. Thanks so much, Kim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.